Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me. Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. Grizzlies win 5 straight edition. My name is Keith Parish, and I'm joined, as I am every few weeks, by the Daily Memphian's Chris Herrington. Chris, how's it going?
What's up? What up? Give a salute to the crazy people who watch these things instead of just listen to them.
That's right. This is an audio and video podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube in addition to whatever podcast app you use. Chris, the Grizzlies, they win 5 straight, and I still find it titillating and exciting whenever the Grizzlies have a win streak. This is not a franchise that has a ton of 5-game win streaks, just basically in their entire history. I looked this up. This is the Grizzlies' 9th win streak of at least 5 games in the past 2 seasons. I don't ever want to get callous or numb to the fact of like, hey, this is awesome. Our team wins a lot.
I'm putting us both on the spot here. What's the record? Is it 11? I think it's 11. Something like that.
11 straight last season.
Right.
Was the record. I mean, they went 26 years without having a double-digit win streak in a one season.
Hey,
they had one that overlapped 2 seasons.
I say let's gun for the record. The next 3 games are Utah, San Antonio, San Antonio. I mean, come on, let's keep it rolling.
And yeah, I agree with you. This is like the real. We had like the hard schedule, then we had this little soft schedule, then it gets maybe hard again. Yeah, man, I think we can do it. It's all about focus. I don't know, what is it? What is the?
I think it's been an interesting stretch when you go back to the 2 losses that preceded the win streak, because. And I've done this spiel before, written and on radio here, but to me, the Christmas Day loss and the homecoming loss, like to me, the Oklahoma City Denver losses are different things. They were more typical regular NBA schedule stuff happens losses. I think the Christmas Day loss was a real comeuppance loss. That was a real, like, we built this up and we got smacked around. And I think the Grizzlies, they were really in their feelings about it. And I think they carried that over to the homecoming game against Phoenix, which to me is one of the worst performances. Probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen from a Grizzlies team when you consider all the context, how good they are, how poor their opponent was in terms of who was on the floor and how they've been playing, in terms of the moment, the packed building up to the rafters, coming home after Christmas, and they just laid an egg. And laid an egg to the point that Taylor Jenkins like pulled the plug with 7.5 minutes to go, which is not the normal time to pull the plug, even down 20. And so for them to get themselves to like pull themselves up and dust themselves off and the whole thing and get back on track the way they have, I think it has been great. And I give a lot of credit to John Morant in that Toronto game, the game that started the streak, where the few games before that they'd been struggling. He'd been taking a lot of shots, scoring a lot of points. It's like he was there for it and his team wasn't, was sort of the feel for it. And he went to that Toronto game, the career high 17 assists, and made everyone else's life easier. And I really think that's exactly what the team needed in that moment, to like get everybody going. And they've been humming since then for the most part.
Yeah, their most recent win over the Magic on Thursday, it featured Jaren Jackson Jr. I think we could call that Apex Jaren. It was the first 30-point, 10 rebound game of his career. What were your takeaways from the Magic game?
So in terms of Jaren, a couple of things that jumped out to me about the Jaren game. One is that, and I know Paolo Banchero had ended up with a pretty good box score line, but he didn't generate his numbers when Jaren was guarding him for the most part, as I remembered. I haven't gone back and looked. But watching that game, we haven't really seen a lot of Jaren guarding on ball this season. As a matter of strategy, they try to put him on guys he doesn't have to focus on ball so he can rove and block shots and be disruptive. That was one of the few games where he's guarding, the other team's top scorer and top on-ball guy. And it's not surprising he did a good job on him, but it was a reminder, though, he can do that too. It's not just the great off-ball defender. He's a good on-ball defender too when you ask him to do that. And for him to put up the numbers he did in terms of, points, rebounds, block shots, the whole shebang, but also guarding Banchero well when he was doing that, to me, made it more impressive. And then offensively, what jumped out to me was the range of the ways he scored. He hit 2 3-pointers, 2 from three. So you had that. Hitting the simple, like, I'm bigger than you jump hooks in the post, which we want to see. He's also had some face-up drive scores. And if I remember correctly, he had at least a couple of, like, just catch and finish. He obviously had the lob at the end, but I think he had one standard, like, roll to the rim, catch and finish, unless I'm conflating different games in my head. But I think he did that too. And that's what you want from Jaren. You want that menu. You don't want him to be a 3-point specialist, but you don't want him to be the just get your butt on the block. You want him to do all of those things and have a good balance of them. And I thought it was great to see the sort of that balance of different ways to score.
The specific thing that Jaren's done the past, I think, 2 to 3 games that, at least anecdotally to me, feels like it's happened more. It's that just driving, sweeping left-handed layup. Right. And maybe it's just, I said this last episode, maybe it's just inattention to detail by our opponents, letting Jaren go left every single time. But like when you combine that erratic, we'll call it, or above average, maybe 3-point shooting, now when you can add this 7-footer who can drive to the basket and hit a lefty layup, and like it's a sweeping long stride layup. He did that a lot against the Magic. That plus like the post-ups have been pretty good. There's only been a couple of times this year where it was a post-up where it was like a old Charles Barkley, Mark Jackson, I'm actually dribbling post-up. It's most of them are where, he catches it, immediately turns and rises up quickly for that left-hand hook. And that whole menu, like you say, that's like, all right, now we got a player.
That was the first thing he did. When he was 19 years old, that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
But it was easier for him that season because Mike Conley was used to getting the early hitters in the post for a power forward. He's been doing that for 10 years with Zach Randolph. And Marcus All was used to playing high-low. And so the Grizzlies are not as good at feeding the post as they were back then. They're better at just about everything else, but they're not as good at feeding the post. Different game now. So a lot of times it's harder for Jaren to get the touches in the right moments and the right spots for that stuff than it was, when he was playing with Conley and Gasol. But that's always been there. The thing that I like that's happening this season, and I've been meaning to double check in the numbers to make sure this is indeed happening more than it used to, and I'm pretty sure it has, but I haven't looked at it. And then I want to talk to people about it, and I haven't done that either. So I'm just, I think he's catching more lobs, and he has not been part of that lob party for the most part until this season. And it seems like they're doing a lot more design plays, starting games, coming out of timeouts where they're finding him on those lobs. It's becoming more of a regular thing. And I don't, part of that I think must be team emphasis, but part of it, I think he must be a little springier, but getting off the floor a little bit better than maybe he has the past few years, now more further removed from that knee injury. And so I like seeing that. I mean, the thing about Jaren is so much of his offense has been 3-pointers or like trying to drive from the 3-point line when he has a little bit of dribble blindness, right? Like, and as a big man, you want to get part of the reason big men have good shooting percentages is they get lots of easy looks. And he is in recent past not gotten enough easy looks. You're starting to get more of that this season.
Well, yeah, right now, I mean, he's shooting a career high on field goal percentage. He's over 50% overall from the field, which is 10 percentage points higher than last season. Yeah. And that definitely, it's real encouraging to say. Maybe it is just baked into that. He's getting more of those easy finishes, those lobs, those dunks. I feel like his post-ups, the difference in my memory, at least from his rookie year to now, is maybe in his first couple of years on post-ups, a lot of the times he was trying to draw contact, or like he would go into the defender and he never got a whistle because he looked so awkward doing it. It's one of those where I, as a fan, I'm sympathetic to the referees to be like, hey man, that looks really awkward. I don't think anyone's giving you a foul call. Now he's like, I'm taller. And also he's it's almost a quick shoot. He's like, I'm taller and I'm just going to go up immediately with like 5 feet from the goal and hit this hook. And it's really hard to defend. And
he's stronger. He's not getting bumped off his spot quite as much. And that's the other thing about Jaren is that he was so crazy young when he came into the league. He was the second youngest player in the NBA his rookie season. He was the youngest rotation player. And so he is sort of, his body has grown more over the course of, these few years in the league than most players do. But pretty much every player, their body develops after they get in the league. But Jaren, I think more than most because he was 19 years old when he showed up.
I feel like the other thing that jumped out to me for the Magic game, I mean, it was one of those where they were blowing the Magic out. I mean, I thought most impressively They scored 9 points in the first 9 minutes. Then they finished the half with 65. So they dropped 57 in about 15 minutes. John Morant with a ho-hum, another 30-point game, obviously all-star, playing great. I'm going to go way deeper down the cast of characters to go ahead and say Ziaire Williams caught my eye, because Ziaire Williams, I thought I want to ask you about the previous game where, he was trucking on his way to a DMP, except it was a blowout. He was still technically, if you look at the hierarchy of players, Roddy and Conchar came in before him, but he has an excellent game. He knocks down 3 3-pointers, 16 points. What is your takeaway of Ziaire being maybe losing his spot in the rotation and then having a great game against the Magic?
Yeah, Zaire's one of the 2 other players other than Jaren who jumped out to me in terms of interesting in that Orlando game. I don't want to make too much of it because it's one game. And one of the things I wrote about this week was sort of about the wing rotation and is it good enough? Do they need to try to upgrade it or do something with it relative to the playoffs? Orlando in the regular season is not the Western Conference Finals. And so I'm pretty high, not as high as some people are. Shout out John Roser. But I'm pretty high on Ziaire Williams as a long-term prospect.
Well, Roser's financially invested with all those rookie cards. He needs Ziaire to be better.
I'm high on Zaire's upside long-term, but I think it's very much a long-term proposition. I am not, he held his own pretty well in the playoffs last year. I don't have a lot of confidence in him being a meaningful player in the postseason this season as you go multiple rounds. I think it's a longer-term project with him. Now, he could surprise me, and that would be the hope. I think, for the Grizzlies, they need someone to be the third wing who really matters on the team. And to me, you got 5 options, and you're not sure who, if anybody, it's going to be. And if he can get fully healthy and get back in a rhythm, he could be the best option. I think he's certainly the highest upside option going forward of the 5. The thing you can count on with him, and it matters with the Grizzlies, the way they play, is the springiness, the vertical spacing he gives you. I think it's important. I think percentage-wise, like his 3-point numbers on his career aren't anything great, but I think he's shown he can be, a good 3-point shooter. So you put those 2 things together, you got something to build on, sort of the spacing horizontally and vertically. The rest of his game, I think, is going to come in time, but I just think he's still so thin and so young that even if he gets healthy, stays healthy, and gets back into a groove, in terms of playoff basketball, I just don't know about it this season.
Yeah, I wonder, we've seen it before where there are tweaks to the back end of the rotation where it's like, all right, now tonight it's Xavier Tillman's chance, and then it's back to Brandon Clark's chance. We've done this before, but like right now, where Roddy and Conchar are clearly ahead of, or like Conchar's going to stay ahead of Ziaire. I would be really surprised.
I don't know.
You're not sure?
Well, I think they would very much like for Ziaire Williams to be the third wing.
Yeah.
I think they are clearly not going to force it as much as they forced it last season, because it's not just a skill thing now. It's also a physical related thing now. I think their preference would be that Ziaire Williams takes that spot by the end of the season, I'm guessing, but I don't think they're going to force it.
Right.
And I saw Roddy playing ahead of Williams these last 2 games. It was a shift in pecking order, but I saw it as a temporary shift related to, can Williams, get healthy enough to be productive over multiple games and play multiple games without having to sit, kind of thing. To me, it's likely a short-term thing, although they love David Roddy.
Yeah. I mean, Roddy, I would say on your Daily Memphian pod and your writing, you were initially a little bit lower on Roddy. I feel like he's been pretty solid, especially the last 2 games, man. I mean, his 2-pointers, he's scoring, he's knocking out a few threes.
No, I'm coming around a little bit on Roddy. I don't like to assume guys are going to be great just because they put on a Grizzlies uniform, right? And so, I tend to be wait and see, and I tend not to shift my priors before the Grizzlies pick guys too quickly. Roddy, I mean, if you look at the shooting numbers, they're still not great, right?
No,
but he's making plays. I think he's gotten better defensively. I think the defensive stuff was a disaster early in the season. I think he's gotten tangibly better. He still has limitations in terms of, he's 6'5" and he's not the quickest guy laterally, but he's really strong. He's got a long wingspan. And the big thing with Roddy is he is there for it. It's that competitiveness, that tenacity. I think that's what's given the coaches confidence in him early on. that he's a gamer and he'll just get out there and make plays. And I do think if the 3-point shot ever starts to fall consistently, and he shot well in college, his last season in college at least, if the 3-point shot ever falls consistently, I think he's going to be a good offensive player, at least in a role player sense. And the defense stuff, it's always going to be a question of can the positive attributes, which is the strength and the tenacity, the wingspan, overcome the negative attributes, which is going to be the foot speed and the height. And it's sort of how that balances out. I mean, Dylan Brooks physically is not someone who should be one of the game's great defenders necessarily. That's not the way he was projected coming to the NBA, because he has short arms and not the greatest athlete, but he had other attributes that made him that. And with Roddy, who knows?
One thing that I've noticed about Roddy is I feel like he's very good at not fouling. I feel like he's good at being very disciplined with his hands. I looked this up just because I wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong. He's in the 67th percentile for foul percentage, which is the amount of time he fouls, which is not nothing, but it's above average for a rookie.
For a rookie wing,
who you think, like you said, has limited foot speed. And so that's pretty solid, to not, like, he doesn't put his hands on guys. He knows to keep his hands sideways. I don't know if they had that on his college scouting tape. Like, this guy doesn't commit these fouls.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. It's not just that he, as a rookie, they're not trying to hide him defensively. They're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
They're doing the opposite. They are throwing him. They are throwing him in the ocean defensively sometimes. It's go guard. They're giving him the same assignments they give Dylan. It's like go guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Then I put him on De'Aaron Fox, but go guard Shai, go guard Zion. They are not hiding him. They are exposing him defensively, and he's up to the challenge. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but he's been there for it.
Yeah, I'm now looking at these cleaning the glass foul percentage plays, and apparently Brandon Clark and Desmond Bane commit more fouls per play than Jaren Jackson Jr. So, who knows?
Desmond Bane has fouled out of more games than Jaren this season.
I wanted to specifically ask you about that. How did Desmond Bane? How was he allowed to foul out of about? How in the world did he get to stay in with 5 fouls? Blew my mind. I've been talking about it with lots of other people. They're like, wait. What? There's no foul trouble for Desmond Bane? That was so perplexing to me.
I think another part of it with Jaren, it was funny. Jaren had the quote unquote foul trouble that clearly impacted his rotations, the Denver game and then the Christmas Day game. And those were both on national television. So then I started to notice a lot of national podcasts I'm listening to suddenly talking about how Jaren Jackson's got to learn to stop fouling. And I just want to raise my hand and say, I mean, yes, partly true, but partly his foul rate's gone down 4 years in a row. The other thing with Jaren, I think people outside who aren't watching the Grizzlies closely day to day think that his minutes this season, which is 27, 26, something like that, pretty low, is because of the fouls. It is primarily because they are restricting his minutes. They have not said this, but they are clearly very self-conscious about his minutes coming off the injury. Yes. They have him on essentially a minutes limit, and that's what it is more than anything.
Yeah, I agree. Although, I mean, when you get in foul trouble on Christmas Day, everyone's going to.
That's right. Everybody notices.
It's going to remind you of what, basically what your initial impressions. It's also like the rebounding thing, where everyone's like, "Oh, Jaren's a terrible rebounder." It's like Jaren's a good rebounder. Like he's.
I don't know. If he's a good rebounder. He's gotten better. That's for sure.
He now, I would argue, he's basically as good as any big. Like he might not be. He's not. Superior. He's not a plus rebounder, but like his rebounds per 100 possessions are the same as Pau Gasol's were Pau Gasol's all-star years. Like it's just it's a limited number of minutes. I mean, also, by the way, I don't think Pau Gasol was that good of a rebounder. Pau Gasol was a good, he was a good offensive rebounder. He was not a good defensive rebounder. He got moved around a lot, but I think Jaren has definitely developed with that, that strength we were talking about. And with his size, he's now getting contested defensive rebounds, which is something I didn't feel like he got previously. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk maybe a little bit about how the Grizzlies stack up in the West and overall in the league. The Edge Pass is the newest way to get access to FedEx Forum on game days, including to premier venues like Big River Steel Edge and Caesar Sportsbook Lounge. Don't miss seeing Ja, Dez, Dylan, and the rest of your Grizzlies take on the biggest names and the brightest stars, and lock in your tickets to make big-time noise today by calling 901-888-HOOP or clicking grizzlies.com. All right, so Ziaire had a good game, but also, like we said, and even Jaren had a good game, but, we're playing the Magic, and the Magic have been okay. They've been competitive. The Grizzlies, are tied for the best record in the West right now, but they're not really on pace to win a ton of games. I think they're on pace to win 54 games, which is great, which is awesome. Yeah. But we, as much as we still enjoy our 5-game win streaks and we still enjoy my regular season victories, we now have higher aspirations and hopes for the Grizzlies, and the goal is to win a title. And 538 thinks the Grizzlies have just as good a chance to win a title as anyone, technically a better chance than everyone but the Celtics. How are you feeling about this Grizzlies team as they stand right now? I know you just wrote something for the Daily Memphian about like some trades, and your idea was this is maybe a meaningless exercise again because
I'm guessing there's a north of 80% chance the Grizzlies stand pat and do nothing at all.
Yeah, I'll co-sign that.
Right. But north of 80 is not like 100, not 95, whatever. I think they have to. I think that they have to assess the Danny Green thing and ask themselves, truly, do we think he's going to help us in the playoffs? Yes or no? And the answer is no. They should try to at least do something small, if nothing else. I think the Grizzlies are where they should be relative to the standings right now, in the sense that I think the two best teams in the West, not just in the standings, but in reality, the two best teams in the West in terms of having both a high ceiling and a high floor are the Denver Nuggets and the Memphis Grizzlies. Yeah. I think they both have higher ceilings than New Orleans. I'm thinking in terms of the playoffs. I think they have higher floors than Golden State and Phoenix and the Clippers because of, some of the injury issues and the age issues and all of that. Now, I think, is it possible that a healthy Golden State team or a healthy Clippers team, if they just show up in the playoffs whole, do they just reach up from behind and catch the Nuggets and Grizzlies and pass them and get to the finals? That could easily happen. And so I don't think the Grizzlies' place in the standings above those teams is necessarily indicative of their chances come playoff time. But I do think Grizzlies are in the upper tier any way you want to cut it. And I think they have less of a needle to thread in terms of their chances in the playoffs, because I think, than Golden State, the Clippers, because I think those teams really have to be right, and they have to be right for 4 rounds. And I'm not sure if they're going to be, but if they are, they can beat Denver or Memphis. Definitely.
Yeah. I think the concern for the Grizzlies that we had last year, it's still the same exact concern. I mean, it was awesome to see against the Magic that Roddy, Conchar, and Williams were like 6 of 9 3-pointers combined. Yeah. Like, that's totally awesome. But this Grizzlies team right now, and this is obviously colored because Bane has missed some time and hasn't been himself since he came back. But this Grizzlies team is making fewer 3-pointers per game this year than they did last year, which didn't feel like it was going to be the case after a hot start.
The two things they talked about in the summer was, and they're related things, but the two things they talked about were, to be a better playoff team, we need to be a better shooting team, a better half-court offensive team. Those are not missions accomplished this season.
Right.
They're basically about the same on both, but relative to the league, they're worse because the league has gotten better offensively. But their own raw production is basically about the same as a 3-point shooting team and as a half-court offensive team, roughly about the same as it was a year ago.
Yeah, I was looking. I haven't looked today, but they were still right around that, like 22nd, 23rd, 24th in effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, half-court scoring. Some of it's, the free throws, which is just weird. Like, Roddy's down to 58%. Not that he has the highest volume that matters that much, but he was one of the guys who was making free throws earlier. But the whole team just terrible at free throws. I don't know if there's a fix to any of that. If it is a player addition, I
think if Desmond Bane can get back into the form of early season Desmond Bane, it's going to fix a lot. I don't assume that will or won't happen, by the way. I've seen a lot of people say, well, Desmond Bane's going to come around like any day now. He'll be back to normal. And I'm not saying he won't, but I don't assume that he will. I do think the injury he had has impacted his game upon his return. He's been good enough to help. Like, getting him back has been good for the Grizzlies, but he has not been the player he was early in the season. And I don't think it's a given that he becomes that player again this season. Hopefully he will, he might, but I don't assume that is a definite.
Yeah. I'm still thinking that, like you said, I don't anticipate them making a trade. I'm hopeful that the Danny Green, I'm coming back by the All-Star break, that he keeps saying is true, and we can see that extra guy. But I do think, I don't think their top line is going to change. I do think that with their top line, if it is, Ja, Jaren, Desmond, Dillon, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, Tyus Jones in that. Like, that's good. That's a puncher's chance, I feel like.
Yeah. No, I think they're starting 5 plus Tyus and Brandon Clark. That's 7, right? And sometimes in playoffs, you may only play 8 anyway.
Yeah.
That 7, I think, is solid. And that 7, I think they think is solid. And I think that 7's not going to get altered. I think that's going to be your main 7. And so the question is, even with that 7, you got to have a wing. You got to have a wing in your rotation playing a significant role. Even if you cut down the playoffs, you got to have a wing. And so, like, you got options: Conchar, Danny Green, Ziaire Williams, David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, Santi Aldama, kind of, consider
Aldama,
him in the mix, right? I just, it's a matter of, do they feel like they need to expend a little bit of future resource to add a little bit in that area? They have the volume. I don't know if they have the quality. And I think, maybe you pair Danny Green's expiring with, protected first round pick and try to get you a veteran shooter or whatever. But I think that would be the most they would do. And even that, I think, is probably unlikely.
That's why I keep telling people, if someone asks about like Kyle Kuzma, it's like, no, they're not doing a Kyle Kuzma trade, because they're not adding anyone to their top 5. I mean, like their top 5 or 6, like we're saying. I mean, the dream is like the OG Anunoby, but there's no.
Now that's one, if he were actually available.
Yeah, but he's not. I'm saying there's no traction.
Right.
Yeah.
But if he were, I think that's when the Grizzlies would make an offer and we would see. But I the names I threw out there, and I think I did this with you on a pod a few weeks ago, but
yeah,
the names I threw out there that I consider most realistic were Malik Beasley and Alec Burks, right? It's that level of player. It's like, who could be your 8th guy? You entice me with Alec Burks, but that's like specifically the kind of guy they've avoided adding in the past few seasons. I honestly feel like it's almost a stamp pat, but like I still think they're so close, and I think that like they're probably happy, just like, leaning on, if we get Desmond Bane, back, that we're good enough. I guess maybe there is an extra, if they're somewhat concerned about his injury, if they're somewhat concerned, Danny Green can give you nothing. Also, like, are they going to, you say 8 players is what they can play in the playoffs. I mean, unless it's game 1 against the Warriors and you want to give every 10 guys like their 20 minutes or whatever, like they haven't they haven't really shortened the rotation. No, I'm not saying they would do that at the jump, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying playoff basketball has a tendency to, no, what they do is like the guys play more minutes, right? So even if you play 9 or 10, like John Morant is going to play like 37, 38 or whatever in a playoff game. And hopefully Jaren at that point will be playing like 32, 33 or whatever instead of 26. So there will be some of that. They will lean more into their top players.
Yep. Well, I'll let you go. It was a good talk. I feel like we hammered out all the normal things that we've done. Like, I will ask you, if the playoffs were to start today, what's your level of confidence against, say, the elite teams? I'll say I consider it a coin flip with a lot of these teams, and maybe the Grizzlies on like a 45% chance against some of them. Like, I still don't think the Grizzlies can beat the Mavs in a playoff series, and I'm just maybe scarred by that. I don't think the Mavs are very good, but the Mavs are elite in the half court and the Grizzlies are not. And that scares me a lot.
No, that's a good point. I looked at that when I was looking at the Grizzlies half court numbers, because I cited that in my column today. I noticed the Mavs half court offense number is very high.
Yeah.
I would not relish playing the Mavericks in a playoff series. I would pick the Grizzlies to beat the Mavericks in a playoff series, but I wouldn't relish that.
Yeah.
The Grizzlies fundamentals are strong. I mean, if you don't know anything, you're just looking at paper, you probably would like these analytic sites, you would spit out the Grizzlies as the most likely team. Maybe it's part of me seeing no reason to move off of my prior, and my prior before the season was I thought Denver was going to come out of the West. And so given that they're first in the West, and they've been getting better over the course of the season. Jamal Murray's been getting better.
They beat the Clippers by 50.
Right. So I see no reason to move off my own prior in that way.
Yeah.
But I wasn't pounding the table about it then, and I'm not now. So I think the Grizzlies have a decent chance to get to the NBA Finals. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. That's an awesome place to be.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
Man, like a 15% chance of making the finals. Sign me up. Sounds amazing. Anyways, Chris, always a pleasure talking with you. I look forward to your Daily Memphian podcast. Got John Hollinger coming up soon, and that'll be a great listen. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Keith.